In the first two parts of our exclusive investigative series, The Gang Behind the Badge, we showed you a close-knit subgroup within the LA County Sheriff's Department, a group called the 3000 Boys.
Well, they have similar tattoos, they flash gang-like signs, and they've been linked to violence at work and away from work. Now, Carolyn Costello is here with the third installment of her special investigation. Carolyn.
Micah, Cher, tonight we introduce you to a true insider, a sworn LA County Sheriff's deputy who tells us the 3000 Boys are just one of several cliquish, tattooed deputy gangs. Gangs he believes are a potent, destructive force in the department.
There is a distinct line drawn between inked and non-inked deputies.
The ink that this current active LA County Sheriff's deputy is talking about are the tattoos worn by groups of deputies as symbols of their allegiance to deputy-affiliated gangs within the department.
They call them subgroups, secret societies.
The deputy, who has asked to remain anonymous for fear of reprisals by other department members, is speaking exclusively with KTLA News out of concern for what he sees as dangerous elements within the Sheriff's Department. He says for these secret deputy gangs with names like the 3000 Boys, the Vikings, the Regulators, the Grim Reapers, and others, allegiance to their brothers sometimes comes before protecting the public and even before the law.
It's invite only. There's certain rites of passage that you have to do to get the tattoo.
What are the rites of passage to get a tattoo?
Deputy-involved shootings, beatings, gun arrests. They want the ink so bad that they'll do whatever they have to do.
The deputy says he has declined getting a tattoo and joining a deputy gang. He says he has seen ink deputies bend or break the rules, yet be rewarded by their fellow deputy gang members.
Once you get the ink, there comes privileges. There comes scheduling, car assignments, vacations, specialized units. You have everything.
The secret, tough guy life of ink deputy gang members like the 3000 Boys bubbled to the surface last Christmas at a brawl in Montebello involving the 3000 Boys that prompted this 911 call.
3 of them held one guy down while another one beat him.
So they're sheriff officers that are fighting?
Yes.
That fight now has 6 3000 Boys facing termination. And the 2 deputies beaten up that night by the 3000 Boys filed this lawsuit last week. The suit alleges that by allowing the gang-like activity of deputies, the Sheriff's Department is encouraging an atmosphere of lawlessness and violence.
Do you think these groups breed a propensity for violence?
They brag about it. They brag about kills in deputy-involved shootings.
Attorney Bradley Gage has handled several cases involving sheriff's deputy gangs. He says high-ranking Assistant Sheriff Paul Tanaka has a tattoo himself, a vestige of his earlier days in the Linwood Vikings deputy gang.
How much more ratification can an organization have than to say the second highest person from an organization of 10,000 sworn officers is part of this?
LA County Sheriff Lee Baca agreed to sit down exclusively with KTLA to answer many of these allegations about the LA Sheriff's Department's gang-like subgroups.
Is Assistant Sheriff Paul Tanaka tattooed as a Viking?
Yes, he is. And that's his choice when he was then at the Linwood Station. But from my point of view, I don't think that tattoo has ever had anything to do with his performance.
Sheriff Baca maintains that the deputy gang issue has been merely the drunkenness of a few bad apples.
If we didn't have 6 drunk deputies beating up other deputies off duty at a Christmas party, we wouldn't be here talking, would we?
But the deputy we spoke to insists the problem is much bigger and runs much deeper.
Why did you feel compelled to talk to us?
This gang behavior and this gang mentality that we have within the Sheriff's Department has to change. I think at some point you have to ask that question. Are you going to be a professional police officer, or are you going to be a gang member?
And Sheriff Baca did answer dozens of questions about the allegations of gang-like behavior among his department's rank and file. We asked him, do these secret subgroups in fact wield tremendous power over other non-inked deputies?
Do you think inked deputies bully non-inked deputies?
What cop have you ever met that's ever been bullied that doesn't know how to take care of themselves?
So you think these deputies need to toughen up and defend themselves?
Yeah, I do. I think they need to man up and say, listen, I'm not a wimp.
We've been told that the status of some of these deputies will rise in these groups with certain acts like deputy-involved shootings, deadly use of force.
And you might be surprised by Sheriff Baca's answer to that and many more questions in part 4 of our exclusive investigation, The Gang Behind the Badge. That airs tomorrow night on the KTLA 5 News at 10 o'clock.
All right, Carolyn, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. Last night, in part 3 of our special investigative series, The Gang Behind the Badge, we introduced you to an active LA County deputy sheriff who made serious allegations about a dangerous gang-like subculture of deputies within the sheriff's department.
That's right. Now Carolyn Costello is here with the 4th installment in her series, and the sheriff is speaking out.
That's right. This is part 4. The story certainly come a very long way. It started with the 3,000 Boys, a group of tattooed deputies accused of beating up their coworkers, beating up inmates in Men's Central Jail, and in one instance, threatening a bar bouncer. Then an active duty deputy came forward telling KTLA the 3,000 Boys and other tattooed deputies are putting the interests of their subgroups ahead of the law. These charges are serious enough to elicit a detailed response from the top cop, LA County Sheriff Lee Baca. And in our report tonight, we sit down with Sheriff Baca to hear about the gang behind the badge from his veteran perspective.
They want the ink so bad that they'll do whatever they have to do.
This active LA deputy sheriff, who has asked that his identity be concealed for his and his family's safety, says that tattooed, cliquish members of the sheriff's department put their fellow tattooed deputy brothers first.
Once you get the ink, there comes privileges.
But Sheriff Lee Baca disagrees. Sheriff Baca agreed to sit down with us in light of the many allegations advanced in our series. Baca concedes that there have indeed been a number of tattooed deputy subgroups over the years.
So having worked in the sheriff's department for 45 years, I've monitored every one of these groups since 1972.
We've heard ink deputies get special privileges, better assignments, promotions.
Without your tattoo, you're going to claim that the guy with the tattoo got a special assignment. I mean, this is part of human nature. It's just not how we go about doing business here. We don't look at tattoos as any measure of success.
And about the allegation that ink deputies' status rises through the deadly use of force.
They brag about it. You know, they brag about kills in deputy-involved shootings.
Do deputies in these groups brag about officer-involved shootings?
I interviewed 130 deputies involved in shootings, some with the tattoos, some without the tattoos. I've never met a deputy sheriff that was happy to be in a shooting and would even brag about it. In the sheriff's department, we don't tend to brag about much of anything.
Another allegation that ink deputies hold the power in the department and bully non-ink deputies.
What cop have you ever met that's ever been bullied that doesn't know how to take care of themselves? If you don't know how to deal with someone who is, quote, threatening you that's also wearing a badge, then why are you a cop?
So you think these deputies need to toughen up and defend themselves?
Yeah, I do. I think they need to man up and say, listen, I'm not a wimp.
We've been told by a deputy that when he goes to his superiors, he has been told, go away, be quiet.
I would say that any deputy that has stated that no supervisor is sympathetic to a complaint is questionable in what they're telling in the way of the truth. And if there's specifics that can be pointed out to me, I suggest that deputy bring it straight to my office. I'll straighten it out for him.
Sheriff Baca says in the case of the so-called Christmas brawl in Montebello, a fight among deputies that led to the recommended firing of 6 3,000 boys, the real culprit wasn't their gang-like bond. It was alcohol, plain and simple.
I've been around a long time, and I've seen a lot of deputies get in trouble over drunkenness. That is the core of what occurred with these 3,000 boys. It wasn't their tattoo. It wasn't their unit. It was their friendship and their drinking.
Ultimately, despite the allegations of deputy misconduct by a department insider, despite allegations of abuse by Central Jail inmates, and despite a new lawsuit alleging deputy lawlessness and violence, all linked to the department's tattooed subculture, Sheriff Baca stands by his rank and file.
I'm on the side of no tattoos at all, but I know the character for the large part of the people that have the tattoos, and they're not interested in causing problems with their fellow deputies. They're not interested in favoritism over a tattoo, and they're not interested in making the tattoo a reason for who they are. The problem is, you still can't defend it, and I don't defend it.
And Sheriff Baca insisted to us that his door is always open and that for any members of the department who have concerns about their treatment or other deputies' conduct, they are encouraged to come directly to him or to the civil rights attorneys whom the department retains in the Office of Independent Review. He promises swift, direct action on any complaints. Micah, Sheriff.
But Carolyn, the sheriff in your story tonight and last night as well appears as though he isn't concerned about allegations of a gang-like subculture.
You know, one of the things he said to us when we sat down was that it is very rare that a lot of these complaints make it to his office. A lot of these issues never come forward. So it seems like if these complaints are actually being made, they're getting lost somewhere in the ranks before they make it to the sheriff. And this is the very problem that the deputy we interviewed yesterday was complaining about. He goes to his immediate superiors. He's told, let it go away. So perhaps it never makes it to Sheriff Baca's office.
All right. Carolyn Costello, thank you for this four-part investigation. Of course, we'll continue to follow this. In the meantime, we do have some breaking